So, I watched By the Grace of the Gods, a very unique and an anime that I didn't think I would like, which is surprising. I heard about it, I heard a lot of good things about it, and then I started watching it and I thought, this is kind of has a very childlike tinge to it, where like the main character looks very, very kid-like to the point where it's kind of like, oh, this is weird. I'm used to anime being like, he's 14 but looks 36, and I'm like, okay. but this is an anime that's very, very interesting. Its premise is also different, and it is also just subheader. It's a very enjoyable experience, but it's also a very relaxed anime. It's like the most sit back when you just need a filler anime to fill in the gap. You're going to enjoy your time. It's not to say that it's not a good show. It's just to say that it's not a show that has an excessive amount of stuff always going on and happening, which actually might be its strength. Again, there's plenty of shows that deliver conflict on conflict, adversity after adversity. This show just kind of has you enjoying seeing this person who kind of made the most of his second life. By the Grace of Gods, the simple plot of it is essentially there's this man who worked himself to death, basically. He worked and worked and worked, and basically everyone treated him like crap. He got beat up constantly. He had a really terrible life, basically, a horrible life. So these gods see this. They already need to basically make a trip to get energy from Earth anyway. It's not sinister. It's just them basically needing energy of magic from Earth that nobody is using. So they give this man a second chance in a fantasy world. They don't also give him a ton of a stacked deck necessarily. They kind of just say, hey, we're just going to give you a good life. We're just going to give you, like, what do you want? You want to do this? You want to do that? Okay, we're going to make you the jack of all trades, master of none. Okay, you want that? Sure. And the main character is very basically like super at peace because he's kind of had to deal with adversity his whole life, and he's kind of just developed this kind of like relaxation, harmony, and like stoicness, which is really interesting to watch. And then he gets transported to this another world, and this time though, the gods say, we'll be watching you, so make us proud and go to the church, and we'll talk immediately then. And then 2 years, I think, or 3 years goes by, and the guy stays in the forest. So the dude, where he got transported to another world, stays in the forest and basically starts training slimes back to back, and he starts to like be interested in what they can do. So he finds out how to make different types of slimes, and how like, oh, this slime can be used to clean clothing instantaneously. And in a world which is still pretty far back in terms of technology, this is like amazing. Like, you don't have to scrub the shit out of a piece of clothing to get a stain out. You just chuck it into this slime, it spins it around, spits it out, and he basically like recreates, like the first couple episodes are showing how he recreates like nice house kind of normalcy that existed within the previous world, cleaning houses, clean baths, clean everything, how to get food and stuff like that. So also they give this person all of the traits that he had in his previous life. So the dude was like like insanely tough and insanely strong. That's what he got for like working his whole life to the bone and also getting beat up a lot. So he was really tough and he was really strong. So now going into his fantasy world, he has like an abnormal amount of toughness, an abnormal amount of strength as well as he has like the jack of all trades. They gave him a lot of other things like, hey, you can use all the magics, all that stuff, and yeah, he has like taming essentially, and that's the one that we're basically seeing. So the premise of the show is there's this person who got reincarnated, and now he's basically using slimes as his catalyst to kind of demonstrate power. And it's really cool because throughout the entire show, it's just a satisfying show that shows the utility of summons, which is my favorite thing in the world. I love the idea of like having, like improving on a thing, like so basically having like summoning a goblin, but just then adding to it, making it like stronger, giving it speed, like helping it get through its mental blocks, all these things, like basically being a coach, but also being the thing that like these people would directly pay you back because they kind of have to, which sounds a little fucky, but yeah, I love the like summoner, like the kind of improving on something over time. Finding its utility though is something that so many shows don't do. So many shows have the summoner thing, and it's kind of just like, all right, they can kind of just, they're stronger, they're getting kind of stronger, but this show says, no, a slime that it combines with this one type of slime creates this, which is like, it creates steel, and these slimes can basically take random scrap and like gross recycled metal and turn it into a perfect pristine block of steel. That's hugely useful, especially if you know how to do that. like make that work. So yeah, and then he also finds slimes that don't like decay you, so like you can just put it on your head and act as like kind of like a seal, like it will protect you from like poisons and stuff like that. So there's all just this unique systemification of utility within this like lower level mob. And then you see over the course of this show, which is so entertaining, this dude, this tiny little kid, slowly start to like develop like crazy levels of skill for his age, but even for his age. All right, so let's talk about the family. So this is another thing that I think will make you interested in the show, maybe. So the kid's living in the forest for a long time. Basically, he saves some people. They take an interest in him, and because he's a kid, they kind of have this feeling of like needing to care for him because he's alone in the forest, and he's like 5 or something, or not 5. He's like maybe 13 or something. So they're like, we need to like look after this kid, and then they come to see him, and then they basically see that he's like the most abnormal slash what is it called, like a master, what is it called when a child is like impressive, like incredibly impressive, like way beyond their years. That they see that he's that. They basically try to like get him to come with them so that they can not only foster that uniqueness and that utility, but also because I'm assuming passively they don't want to leave this kid in the forest as well. And then along their journey, you're just seeing this again. It's so fun because it constantly goes back to that trope, and it does that trope a lot, where it basically takes this kid who is actually like a 30-year-old man trapped in a child's body who never gets creepy with him. Let me solve all these problems because I've had to deal with these problems too in the forest. Let me help them. So there's like a mudslide. He puts on like slime, like tailored outfit essentially that like has it's basically a raincoat, but it's just using like slime's acidic plastic-like coating to make it so that it simulates a raincoat. Stuff like that. There's a utility factor sprinkled on there. I will say, my main problem with the show was that it does look like very much strange in the sense that you are watching like a very young baby-like character do not baby-like things, which in shows there's literally a show where like you see a literal baby, but the art style kind of favors it in such a way that makes it still look like gruff almost. But this art style with this by the grace of gods is very like, it makes everything look like extra like doll-like, and extra like childlike, and extra like, yeah, it looks good. The show looks great, but it's just the scaling of these characters, specifically the main character, looks quite young. And I would love if in season 2 or later down the line they do like a slight time skip just to show that he can look a little bit more like an adventurer, not like a child who's kind of just like, wow. You know, like he kind of looks like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like what's happening? But even though he's fucking a badass, like he's a 30-year-old man who has a wellspring of knowledge. And yeah, that's basically the premise of the show. You're watching this person who fancies slimes and fancies taming, and then he kind of becomes a part of the family who is like the best taming family in the world. And now, go watch the show if that interests you. But I want to talk to you guys ear off about it if you have seen the show. So this is where you'd come back if you want to watch the show. But alas, this show, I got one thing I want to say right off the cuff. I really want him, as much as I either want him to have an evolution to the slimes, which makes them like more of a character, because I love the side plot of like utilizing something that others would deem to be not worthy to utilize. I love that. I also love the idea that there's like this constant passive trope of like, but wait, these can have a use, or wait, I'm going to do research and to find out how this applies. Like he has a blood slime. We don't really know how that could be leveraged in the future, but we know he can. And also we know that there's unique slimes, so he's going to hunt for those unique slimes. I just hope that there's more than just a blob going just jiggling essentially. So again, and it sucks because they really get you on the like, they show you the other monsters in the world, and they show you that there's like fucking birds that are like dark magic birds, there's dragons, there's big ass wolves and shit. So it's like this like kind of like, oh, for the first time in the whole show, you're like, oh, I wish she got something besides slimes. And I hope they're going down that route, although I do understand if they kind of want to keep that as like the baseline, where like he keeps using these undervalued creatures in such a way that makes them super powered. Like who'd have thought a slime, if stacked on top of 1,000 slimes, could basically equal out to the same power level as like an SS tier dragon if they consolidate their power together, which is kind of like the thing he finds out early on, is you can create like a big ass slime and then condense it, which is basically like 1,000 slimes in one, aka making it like a god. Like super strong. Also, the fucking moment I like, because the whole show you're kind of like, he's got a lot of utility. He seems like he's pretty confident about him being able to do X, Y, Z. But then in the arc where they're fighting goblins in the thing, which by the way got kind of dark out of nowhere, I was not expecting that. But to see just the onslaught of him just basically like unleashing like 1,000 tornadoes of slime, and they basically become like giant hands to just bulldoze everybody. And again, I love the strategy of it, because not so many shows do that, where they take like a lower tier mob like a slime, and they show the utility behind it. So he has like way more of a strategist, his brain. So in that same fight, we don't just see him like use overwhelming strength or overwhelming numbers. He sees him like take slimes, and specifically he made slimes that were healers. And he uses his healer slimes to basically be medics, and he uses his kind of like basic slimes to take wounded out of the cave, and he uses some of his like cleaner slimes, which are kind of just jack of all trades slimes, to basically give arrows to the adventurers to keep like shooting the bad guys. And he uses his corrosive slimes to be basically like pits of acid to like kill everything. And it's just cool to see how like that's the coolest part of summoning, in my opinion, is that's something that I fell in love with when I playing a game called Overlord, which is a game where like you had your fire unit, you had like your fire goblin, whatever you want to call it, imp, and then you had your like healer imp, and you had to be really careful about which ones you had. So you could have like a bunch of warriors and like 2 healers, but that didn't really work right. So you'd want to have a little bit of warriors, and you'd want to have a little bit of fire people, ranged fire throwers, imps, and then you want to have a little bit of healers. And just the idea that is so fun. And like if that was a show that they actually took more time with, but like I would have loved to see him specifically be like imagine a show that's like this, with a full-grown ass adult, an adult person, who's an aspiring adventurer, who his only gift is like summoning, and it's looked down upon greatly, or taming, and it's looked down upon greatly. But the person basically maybe gets advice early on, or maybe finds a book that tells him like, actually, that's bullshit. Like summoning is incredibly powerful, but it's only for the people who are willing to invest and hunt for unique creatures. So then this person goes off on adventures specifically trying to find a healer slime, because he knows that he already has a bunch of like warrior imps. So he like, I need to get a healer imp. I did some research. I found out that there's this little tiny tribe out in the sticks. If I can convince one of them, or if I can save one of them, or if I can beat their leader, I can get whatever, 1 or 2 of them, whatever it is. And then for him to go on these journeys and finding these mythical creatures and bringing and kind of creating like a horde or an empire, and then finding ways to utilize their talents outside of things. Because that's the other thing. This show does an amazing job about filler. There's a side arc where basically he makes like an apothecary where he cleans clothing, or whatever, like a store that cleans clothing. And yeah, I think that part was really interesting. Granted, I think the idea behind it that people should take away, who are like gonna maybe make more of these kinds of shows or take something away from it, is the idea that you can do like a side arc as long as there's something for your viewer or for your person to like enjoy the concepts of. So they kind of do it here a little bit. It seems like he's just kind of getting lucky, where like the more a slime does the thing that it does, eats. So the cleaner slimes eat grime, essentially. So the more they eat, the better they get, and the more they level up. So he's kind of finding a way to like train all of his slimes passively, making them stronger, but simultaneously also like building up a unit. Also, they multiply when they level up as well, so you get even more. And I like that idea of like, okay, wait, I can give a utility to the world as well as make them stronger. Like this is a win-win. And as a viewer, you're like, that's awesome. I wish they made a better job of explaining that was the case, because you kind of have to think about it a little bit. But no, I would have loved that arc of like a person who goes around and finds utility within the taming class, and like leverages how you would make that class powerful. Not just like, oh, I got really lucky by getting like a juggernaut boss. Go me, even though that is fun, but it's even more fun to find someone who finds the weak and makes them useful and makes them have potential and unravels their potential, and then bets on them and builds them up even higher to where now they're no longer the weak, they're the mighty. You know, that's such a fun trope to deal with, and that's what this show does largely, except it's not as intense as that even a little bit. The show has a very consistent vibration that is basically constantly like, it's just calmness, it's serenity. I will say it is cute too. It's a very wholesome, cute show. I never really felt like again, there's a lot of this weird idea in anime, which is like if you get isekai'd and you get isekai'd in a new body, you'll be going through like the child experience again, but having a fully understanded like grown ass man's brain, kind of. You still have like childlike, you know, whatever hormone bullshit happening again, but you have a past understanding of how you got through it. So that's a pretext in this as well. There's also like a sister-like character, which again, and this is maybe a testament to the kind of like difference of like Jobless, which I haven't watched yet, but I can't wait. And then this show, which is the guy very rarely seems like he's even interested in that. And also they do a pretty good job about saying like, just because you have a baseline understanding of like, of you know, all these other things as a grown adult, that doesn't mean when you're put into a kid's body with a child's mind, essentially with all these things missing, all these like testosterone, all these things missing, that you would just have this proclivity, you know, just because you know things. You don't have the motivation or hormones to want to act on those things, I guess. And maybe that's what the show is playing with, because the kid basically does not feel like a very like, oh, I don't know, kind of like a kid, basically. He always seems like he's kind of childish, and not childish, that's the wrong way to put it, but like has that like childlike wonder in his eyes. And yeah, basically, the other thing, by the way, probably should have mentioned this right at the cuff, we are getting a season 2 of this anime, which is awesome. It is confirmed by Funimation. It is going to have a season 2. Funimation has gotten dissolved into Crunchyroll now, though, but I still think they're greenlighting this. I would be surprised to see them just say like, oh, you've been working on this at this point? Stop it. I could see them just being like, okay, no, this is going to become a Crunchyroll original. Throw it up. We're going to do that. So yeah, we are going to get a season 2. Funimation has confirmed that. Yeah, we're good to go. That is going to happen. When is it going to happen? I don't know. They recently, I think in 2021, what is it called? Around June 3rd, 2021, that's when they said it's greenlit. People were speculating at the end of this year, 2022, we are going to be getting a season 2, which, by the way, again, this show, I binged because it's super easy to watch. It's just fun, it's enjoyable, it's interesting. I do love the taming archetype. I would love to see where the show goes in the future, because we're talking about season 2. I really want to see the character become like older, because as much as I do like, I think it's fun to have like an evolution over seasons. But yeah, even though I know that's the charm of the show, is like the reason why people are like flipping out so heavily for the main character's progression is because he's a kid. So that therefore it's amazing what he's doing because he's a child. Like he shouldn't know how to do all this. But if he knows this now, imagine what he'll know in the future. That's kind of the pretext. Also, he's hella independent, and everyone's kind of like constantly blown away at how independent he is, because he's a 30-year-old man. He knows how to like survive. Essentially, he's also overworked. And yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think this show does such a good job with the side plots. Like him having been overworked, and then him making like a cleaning store, or like a dry cleaner, essentially. And then for him to basically be super annoyed with the fact that he's basically put in the same position of like maybe taking advantage of people's workforce, because he was being taken advantage of in the old world. So he hates that, and he's like, no, fuck this. I'm sorry. I'm such a bad person. Even though in that world there's again, it's like the aristocracy. So maids work 24/7. You're never allowed a vacation day. You're just going all the time. So they're blown away that he's like, you get some days off. And yeah. But what I want to see more in the future is I don't want them to burn that trope. I love the trope of them finding, people who watch the manga, you'll have to tell me, I read the manga. The one trope I don't want to die is the slime thing. How like it's just finding utility in something that is overlooked. I do worry that the show is very like, he is the slime king. The end. He will not deviate. He may have 2 other things, but that's it. He has a bird. Okay, we got 1. So I'm hoping he gets more. But I do like the idea of like the slimes being this like crazy utility. Within that utility, allowing him to tame things to a greater extent. You know, whereas everything else is kind of like you're like swinging for the fences. Whereas he has this utility workforce that's clever, that's smart, that he's built up for a long time, that can leverage taming these other bigger creatures. And maybe even helping them, and therefore taming them. So to me, I hope that's where the future goes, but I also hope they don't like let that die. I think it'd also be cool for him to bust out like a god tier slime, or to bust out like a god tier dragon, cause he also has spatial magic, and I think magic in this world can be like like leveled up to like 6 different types of ways. So like there's an evolution of it where it's like there's something really cool about what spells he unlocks. But it's basically like storage. So you can just basically take like something and store it into like a dimensional realm, which you've seen in other shows. But he eventually, and this is what I think so many stories need to do, he levels up and it becomes able to basically keep whatever is put into it alive. So like if it has oxygen, it has I think it has like ways to keep things alive essentially. That's where they kind of talk about. I think it may just have oxygen actually. So you can store living things in this dimensional realm and they'll be fine. So to me, that was really cool about like seeing him be like, oh, I have this utility where like it can help me travel. And then eventually it levels up to being like, no, this actually progresses. Because a lot of shows don't do that. Like it's funny because shows like Reincarnated as a Slime, different show, it had just like the kind of like power buff and that's it. So you're just like, he's stronger now. Look at all the attacks he can do. But not like this like, and it sounds weird, but it actually is interesting. Like this minute, tiny little thing becomes greater, and that's pretty damn interesting actually. Like seeing this thing become funner, more engaging, more useful, is a really fun way to keep you like, ooh, I wonder what I'll get next. Ooh, I wonder what that'll turn into. And I wish. Like it's funny because the more I do this series essentially, where I just talk about anime and I try to like celebrate them, like celebrate the reverence that I have for them and the things that I thought they did really well, to try to express why I didn't like and resonate with the things that they did maybe as well. It makes me think of more of like how to make a good story and how to like keep people hooked. And I keep seeing these tropes in these shows that I love dearly, which is like this feeling of introducing an idea and making that idea have like satisfaction, little procs, little tiny like ooh, like can't wait to see what happens next. Can't wait to see what happens next. I was just thinking about the part where he becomes like, he starts doing stuff for the Adventurers Guild, and they're kind of like minuscule things, but they also make sense. Like this is the show that I think would progress beautifully, because he kind of starts off as like an adventurer, but he's a kid, so no one wants him to go fight demons or something. So he kind of proves himself by like doing the grunt work, like cleaning sewers. But because he's a 30-year-old man who's had a horrible life and already had to do grunt work his whole life, he doesn't care. This is grunt work, whatever, he has to do it. But he finds out a way to perfectly do it and utilize his slimes whilst doing it. This is like super satisfying because he's worked for a tool, and we've learned about how to utilize that tool, and now he's perfectly harmonizing this tool with an outcome, which is this is a tool that can be applied to just about anything, his slimes, and to find like the ways his brain connects how can I actually make this better? How can I work through this? How can this become more sequenced? It's satisfying, slightly passively so, but still satisfying. And to see that whole arc where he's like cleaning up stuff, and then again, progressively, they start to realize this kid's no joke. Like this kid's gifted. That's what we could put it. He's very gifted. Also, he seems to be kind of cracked. Like he has an excessive amount of power, but that's not unfamiliar here. People are reincarnated, but no one knows that that's the case. They just know that there's sometimes weirdos who just have a huge surge in power. Compared to everybody else. So they're kind of used to it. They think he might be one of them. Of course, he's reincarnated, and the previous people that the gods brought to this world are also reincarnated. Oh, also the gods. They constantly keep updates on him. They constantly talk to him about how proud they are about him, about like, holy shit, you're actually doing it. Like you're our favorite. Like out of all the people we brought to this world, you're our absolute favorite. You're not like trying to dominate the world. You're not trying to like hurt people. You're just like living a good life, which is like beautiful. And that's kind of the sentiment of the show. It's like to live a full and good life. And a part of his life was just him happy in a forest, finding meaning in unraveling these slimes and understanding what they are and loving them and giving them attention and like building them up and finding out how to utilize their best traits, and finding peace in that. And then also helping people, also hunting for food. So he's facing adversity and all these things. And then in helping people unlocks the next hurdle of his journey, which is to go into civilization. He starts helping that civilization, helping the Adventurers Guild. He starts teaching people, giving the knowledge and spreading the knowledge that he has with people. And he starts like, defending the things that people they care about, the mines. He starts proving himself in a different way. It's like a wonderful representation of the things in life that give us meaning, and that maybe the gods themselves say, you got it right. Well done. Well fucking done. And that's kind of the idea, by the grace of the gods. I think that's mostly a thing about it. Like, hey, we saved you. You had a horrible go of it. We got you, fam. Just have another run. Yeah, you're not going to be OP, but you could have a good life, and this is what that good life could be. But also, I like that it's scalable. Like, I do like that it starts off as him just in the forest, just at peace, and then it scales up, I would imagine, to him being like a literal powerhouse that the whole world's like, wow, this kid's a monster, like a monster. And I imagine, I'd hope it eventually ends up in him like, and it is revving up, so I could see him being like owning a bunch of stores. He's gonna eventually open more stores. He's gonna eventually like utilize his slimes in a greater extent, simultaneously increasing his power and influence, because all of his slimes, the more they do the thing like cleaning, making potions, healing, they become better at them. So passively, by investing in like a merchandise system, he's becoming stronger and stronger, which is such a fun passive gain. So instead of like when there's always like, this is like the best description of filler, because a lot of times filler is meaningless. Like, you could take it out of the equation and it means nothing. Whereas in this show, it makes sense. The reason why he's investing in the market, he's investing in that, is not only to get a roof over his head, also to take care of the people that he employed and now that he loves and he's trying to do that more of, but also because he's passively making more slimes, increasing his power passively. So it's a venture that makes complete sense. It's not filler at all. If you didn't have this, you wouldn't know why his slimes keep getting more and more fucking beefy. And that's such a fun mechanic. It's such a good way to do it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I could talk about the show ad nauseum. I always like to keep this a little bit contained because I can literally ramble for hours. I don't want to waste all your time. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Please go check out this show. I watched it on, well, I guess, yeah, the main service I have now is Crunchyroll. Its Funimation is dissolving, essentially. but yes, you can watch it on Crunchyroll. I watched the dub version. There is a sub version as well. Watch it wherever you want. But it is a show that you should absolutely check out. I think it is good for people who want a filler anime. I don't think it's good for people who've taken a break from anime and want like a big, like, shield hero reincarnated as a slime, Overlord, like a big anime to kind of dig into that has tension, that has this. This is just a very well written, clever show that happens to be very peaceful. It is like the definition of just something that's peaceful and easy to watch, easy to binge, and I'm happy that there's more to come because it very much feels like that easy binge kind of show. I do think it is a hidden gem because I haven't heard many things about it, and I think the reason why it's a hidden gem is because the character art style is a little on the like you're looking at a child, but even more childlike than other animation styles that do and draw children in a way. It's weird. I do think the style of the main character, if he was like a grown-ass like teen, I think it would have sold differently. But also the wonderfulness is in the fact that he is this like child, which makes everyone around him perceive him as being more impressive, which he is impressive, but it makes them seem more impressive, like he's a protege. That's the word I was looking for, protege. Thank you so much for your time. Hope I can see you in the next video. Consider subscribing, maybe even ring the bell or liking at the very least. Thank you so much, and goodbye.